Click. What's up, everybody? This is the PlayStation Full Session Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Arenas, and I have my co-host here.
Cote, PSN bayouboyz.
And today we're in for a very special episode of the PlayStation Full Session because we are talking about the Order 1886, going in depth about the game, no holds barred. We're going to spoil the game. We're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like. And this is a really long time coming. The Order 1886 has been in development for a long time. After all of that, I just wanted to hear what you think of the game. And first, I'll kind of maybe start kind of simple. Did you like the game?
Okay. Well, yeah, I like the game.
Yeah, that's good. Now, is that a hearty recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend the game. I recommend checking it out.
I like the game too. It is not this travesty that maybe some people make it out to be online, unfortunately. But yeah. I think the game has significant problems. I think since now we can no holds barred and talk about the story. The way that the game ends, it does indeed leave it up to the sequel, correct? Especially with the end credits scene, and it definitely looks like there's going to be a continuation of the story here. And what struck me the most is just that, things weren't tied up, which, is kind of commonplace in games today, that, when they end, they just end. Sometimes, and you just, what's going to happen next? But for this particular case, I don't really, it kind of does it in that Batman Arkham kind of way, where it's just, okay, we already know the next one's coming, just leave it on the way that it is. At least Batman Arkham City did have the leisure of having DLC after, which was pretty neat. Never played that DLC, but it's pretty good. But
yeah, but
to me, the Order doesn't earn its place in order to really do that yet, unfortunately. And it's not due to the length of the story. I just don't feel like it's compelling enough to actually kind of do that to itself just yet. It doesn't earn it in any way at all. To me.
Yeah, but I mean, it's only the first game. So,
but. We have first games out there, like, I hate to compare it to Last of Us, but we have Last of Us, which was a rather long campaign and had such a great story and such great characters, and in the way that it ended, it was so brilliant, and I just admired that, it's left open to a sequel, or it could even possibly be its own standalone thing, but I disagree with that since Last of Us will probably see a sequel soon. Just not anytime soon, but one day we will see a sequel to that game. And I felt like by then it had earned its place to do that. But in the Order, it just felt so, quick and in some ways unnecessary at that point to even do that. So whether or not Sony's plan is really do this and to make this a franchise remains to be seen. Whether or not they can churn out another game in 2 years.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny the way you look at it. You look at something like The Last of Us, where they weren't necessarily planning a sequel, but it looks like we're getting one.
Yes, for sure, because
it looks like we're getting one. But with the Order, it's like they're planning a sequel, and it's kind of like
it's already there from the start.
So what you're kind of saying, So what you're kind of saying is, okay, Last of Us, there was no plan for a sequel, so essentially they were shooting for this like big self-contained story. Where the Order, because they're planning a sequel, you can feel that that's what they're planning. They're planning that sequel, and that's why the game didn't feel like it could be all it can be.
Yeah, exactly. And I also feel like given the Order's cinematic presentation, a lot of movies nowadays do that, particularly, comic book movies, they always end on that kind of like note that, oh man, I definitely want to know what happens in the next one after that. Or some other action movies today do that, Fast and Furious, movies like that. But I don't know. I mean, at that point, those movies are like established franchises, and The Order presents itself in such a way that it is a movie. So it kind of maybe wants to play it, kind of sequel based, maybe, where maybe the next one is the Order 1887, given where the Order 1886 ends near the end of 1886. So we're not really sure about that yet until maybe we get some confirmation soon. I'm not sure whenever we'll get those details, but that's probably for a long time. Because I really see the sequel of this game coming out relatively soon, because the engine's done. The engine took a long time. This game was in development I actually had just learned that this game was in development as far back as 2010, when a listing for this third-person adventure game was put up on Ready at Dawn's job description online. And that's when they took their trips to London and all that to take reference photos of things, the smallest of ancillary things, and then just put them in the game. Which, by the way, one of the biggest positives that I'm pretty sure you and I have, that the game looks remarkable. There's been countless YouTube videos that I've seen where, they just analyze the graphics in the game, and the game runs really, really smooth. And it looks amazing. Mm-hmm. Can't commend that enough.
Yeah, because that was the thing too. When people first saw the game in action, that was the big worry at first.
It was rough.
Oh, how well would it run? Yeah. It was really choppy.
Yeah,
and rough.
I remember when IGN they had wrote their preview, got a lot of flack for it. But then when the leaked footage was online, and then I saw it for myself, I was like, wow, this game's not running well. And kind of, sorry to cut you off here, but there's this kind of weird journey of this game that I kind of had heard of. So the game was back in development ever since 2010, and then it was announced at E3, and then the way they kind of show it over the years before it was released was a bit weird. They showed at first kind of the tech details of how the main character that you control interacts with objects in their environment. Really technical stuff. They didn't even talk about what genre the game was even going to be at that point when that game was being shown like that. I remember one of the IGN editors, the way he had to really press to get details on the game. Supposedly, when Sony was scheduling a meeting with the developer, they only had 3 minutes. They only had 3 minutes to ask questions. So the editor was all is it a first-person shooter? And they're like, no. Is it a third-person shooter? Yes. Is it cover-based? And they're like, yes. And then all that. And in no way or fashion, the game was not shown in the gameplay form at all. So if they just saw 1 second of gameplay, it would have answered all of those questions automatically. So that was a little strange. And then as game development progressed, there was that infamous demo that came out where it was not running the greatest. And then later on, as it progressed, we saw more and more of it, especially at E3, and then we had PSX last year, with the Zeppelin level and all that stuff. Some of the same stuff getting shown over and over again, but it all looked great. So, I don't know, it's just kind of a weird way to kind of have a preview cycle for the game, in my opinion. It kind of more weirder games I've ever seen in a while. Just how long and arduous the process has been, but it certainly paid off in a technical standpoint, but in a gameplay standpoint, and just about everything else surrounding the game kind of needs fixing, unfortunately. So I hope within the time that they have, if there is a sequel to this game, which is basically kind of a guarantee that stuff can get fixed, which we wholeheartedly believe that will get fixed, because Ready at Dawn is a really talented studio and they make good games. This unfortunately isn't one of their good games, but I think that they can pull it off, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about this game is that, this is Ready at Dawn's first big AAA game. This is their first independent, original game, because their two previous games were the two God of War games.
Which were already established
on PSP. Yeah, which were great, but they were still based on the same formula that was established in the other God of War games on PS2. So already they were just working with something already there, within a story that was already made. And I mean, they were still good games, but they were still, based off of something. But this is their first big AAA thing. They go from PSP to PS4 development. That's a huge jump on their part.
Yeah, and it's quite remarkable to
working
see
on this original
the technical achievement they had here, especially with this game.
And working on this original story, and I mean, in the end, I mean, you got to commend them for like creating this kind of original game, and this is something that they wanted to be an original IP and be a franchise, but like we said, because they're probably so focused on we want this to be the next franchise, that it hurt the game because like you said, from a story standpoint, they were trying to set up a sequel because there's so many like
I don't know, I say over and over again, it has to earn it first. In my opinion, it just doesn't. Unfortunately, it does just. Given that the game is so photorealistically real and all that stuff, I don't want to say it's a detriment, but it kind of is in a way to me because I'm not sure if I see anything really iconic coming out of it, or like anything of cosplay, or anything that's going to be like stand of test of time, or really anything. Because despite the game looking so
really.
good,
I mean, there's already.
I don't see. Me personally, I don't see it. I said that. Unfortunately, I said that for a game that came out late last year, Destiny, and then my brother had told me by the time I went to New York Comic Con that like dozens of people cosplayed as like Destiny players, but. I don't know. As being like a Sony staple, I just don't know. It's a little unclear for me right now.
No, I mean the game. I mean, no, it's already got cosplay. Like you look at the fan page for it. There's people making cosplay for this. Design their weapon stuff. Like there's the game has a look to its own. Like people are going to recognize this game.
Okay, so in that respect, I'm probably wrong. It's just I don't know. I just. Because the game is so good looking, it just I just don't know if I really want games to ever look photorealistically perfect because maybe it can like lose its own maybe artistic style, even though the Order has its own different flair. Because basically London is like completely transformed in that game because like despite some maybe like key iconic things, you wouldn't even have known that's London if you were out of context in the Order because it looks so different.
Well, because it's a. Well, because it's the alternate reality or whatnot.
Which is awesome, which is really cool.
But I mean, I still think, not every game should look photorealistic, but I do think, they need to, push graphically forward.
Yeah, exactly. Which the Order does.
What's the point of having these new powerful systems if you can't, go forward graphically?
Exactly. And it runs at a really good fidelity rate.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, really. Yeah. Yeah, that was like we said. Like everybody's worried about how smooth the game's going to run, but it runs really smooth. I mean, it's only 30 frames per second.
Oh,
but
it runs at a
solid 30 frames per second. And,
not being nitpicky here, but in the technical test I saw on YouTube, the game only drops in frames. Like in those like small cutscenes when you're like at the Knights Round Table. The guy probably said because of the amount of character models that are there, because there's like a lot of people in the Knights Round Table. That's the only time it ever drops a frame. Mm-hmm. And then it only drops like barely even half a frame whenever you earn a trophy. So I'm not sure if that's maybe why there's a lack of trophies in the game, really. Because it does. I mean, it's UI based, so it's part of the UI. It takes up part of the memory of the PS4. But yeah, supposedly like it drops like half a frame whenever you earn a trophy. It's like a split second, but the guy noticed like, it drops a frame whenever you earn a trophy. So I found that rather interesting. But yeah, it's like barely, that's like nitpicking at that point. The game like runs perfect basically, which is good, thank goodness. So basically, got an engine down. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of things that surround the game just needs some fixing. Like I'm not really a fan of even the collectibles of the game. Like most of the time they're kind of useless. Like despite them looking so good, and the best like handwritten things ever since The Last of Us with their collectibles, which were really awesome to look at, by the way, because The Last of Us. I hate to compare it to The Last of Us a lot because Last of Us was such an amazing game, and period, and everything that you wanted to do in that game. Had a sense of purpose to it. Whether you were just walking around and going in empty houses because, you had to scavenge for stuff, but it also had meaningful collectibles in there that actually added something to the story. But unfortunately, the Order, it doesn't add really anything to the story because I tried reading those newspapers and even listening to those recordings, and then by then, it lost my interest. Like, it didn't help me engage myself in the world in any way possible, unfortunately. So
yeah, it just seems kind of weird.
I just kind of hope they can like. It seemed kind of like an afterthought, just kind of like for you to have something to do as you walk around from point A to point B. I don't have a problem with really walking, but I want at least something to like kind of do, kind of midway, not just walk from point A to point B.
Simple. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the random pictures don't do much.
They don't do much, and it would have helped if even Galahad had said something about it, to gain like a little bit more meaning.
Well, he does. Well, he does say something, but it's not like anything meaningful. Like I just use it to. Whatever he says is just basically for me to realize if I picked this item yet or not, like based on what he says.
Yeah.
And then like even the little items you pick up and interact with don't do much. It's like, oh look, I'm turning this can around in my hand, and it's like, okay.
I mean, it's so good looking though. It's really a testament to how like good the objects look, but it's just kind of like basically showing off at that point. It's kind of like looking at a really cool kid's school project. I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but does it actually work? So, the order works, but I mean, does it actually do its job? Does it actually have meaning to it? So, unfortunately, those don't really have much meaning.
And then one thing I found really weird too about the game was like when you find the little the what's it called, like the little audio tapes or whatever. It's like when you pick them up, you have to like pause the game just to listen to them.
You have to go in that. You have to stay in that menu.
You had to go to the menu and listen to them rather than just play them and keep going and just listen to it while you're playing. And it's really weird because like the PS4 has that whole like speaker thing. You could have at least done it through the speaker on the controller.
Yeah. I actually did. That's another thing.
And that would have been really cool.
Unfortunately, the order doesn't take advantage really much of the external PS4 hardware. It takes full advantage of the internal hardware of the insides, but stuff like the controller doesn't really use much of. I recall, I guess, you use Morse code on the touchpad. Which, I mean...
Oh, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But you only do it once.
Yeah, you only do it once. I mean...
It was cool, but you only do it once.
Mm-hmm. Which is fine, but yeah, stuff like that would have been a really neat addition. I mean, even if you play with headphones, you might lose that, but that's something that would have been really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually forgot about the Morse code thing, but that was cool, though, even though you only do it once in the whole game.
Oh, yeah, that's also a thing about the order. There are some things that you really only do once, which is cool. So the game isn't repetitive in any way, and it doesn't feel like you have to. It doesn't feel like you would have to be on your life to keep continuing to play it. So it kept you on your toes, really. So I would agree with you on that too.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like when you walk up to collectibles, it looks like a thumbprint or a fingerprint, and you think, "Oh, use the touchpad," and it's like, no, you walk up on, it's like, "Oh, press triangle," and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, what the next game? Since you're going to be holding up the collectibles, you're going to be able to move your fingers around them and see how it reacts with your fingers. See a little grease mark.
Well, no, because like Infamous Second Son did that, where it was like, "Oh, walk up to this," and it's like, "Oh, you gotta use your finger, you gotta use the touchpad," or
that's true.
Just open a door in Infamous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, games like Infamous and the Infamous series and Batman Arkham games and BioShock, they all do their collectibles in such a smart way. I would also say audio collectibles in such a smart way that you're able to listen to the audio recordings while you play the game. I'm actually, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I'm starting to wonder maybe if it's because of a pacing issue that the order has, because if you listen to these like sometimes actually long audio recordings while you're playing the game, what if you just end up in the next cutscene, What if you just as you're listening to it, it just like stops all of a sudden? I don't know, because given the game's pace, I mean, I don't know if you're going to be really walking around progressing forward as you're listening to these, but I don't know, the game keeps on going, and I'm not sure if even listening to the audio collectibles would be able to suffice the time by the time you get to the next cutscene, because you're constantly moving forward really all the time. And one thing I wanted to really note, aside from other people's criticism about the game, is that I don't really agree that the pacing is like god awful, because I mean, I'm sure you and I have played games where there has been worse pacing, like Assassin's Creed 3, for me the beginning of Wolfenstein: A New Order. Games like that are like truly terrible at their pacing. And I think with the Order, given its cinematic presentation, I think it's fine that you watch cutscenes and then you play the game. Other games do that, are guilty of that. Max Payne 3 is guilty of that. You can't skip the cutscenes at all, which bothers me, but that's all right. Max Payne 3 does that, so that doesn't bother me too much. The Order is certainly not the first of its kind in that regard at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, with the Order, at least with the Order, it has an excuse because like the cutscenes are done in engine, so it's kind of like, that's why you can't skip it.
Exactly.
Where like other games, it's just like no, we just don't want you to skip it.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable that the game also has a pretty short loading time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the loading's really great too in it.
Yeah, I mean, you know how long it takes to I mean, even comparing back to Naughty Dog again, but yeah, for a game that basically loads once and doesn't have a loading screen like Uncharted, it takes more than twice as long to load than The Order.
Yeah, I mean that's why too the game takes up 30 gigs, which is not as much as which is not as much as some games, and it's because everything's kind of seamlessly together. Like the cutscenes are seamlessly in engine and everything, so it's not like the game has to stop and load up a video file, an audio file, whatever to load that cutscene. So it's all kind of seamless, makes the install files smaller, and why it loads so much faster by doing that.
Yeah, and also the probably another thing is that the audio design is really, really, really good. Despite only one instance was when I was in Nikola Tesla's lab where he was repeating his lines over and over again, telling me to get forward. I'm like, I want to look at your lab. Stop telling me to come over here. But other than that, that repeating dialogue, one scene, yeah, the audio design is fantastic. I mean, everything else sounds the way as it should, and it also has probably the best footsteps sounds in a game because I think the way they definitely, other than Grand Theft Auto or Last of Us. Those games seem like they also recorded footsteps in particular situations if you were stepping in sand or wood. But the Order, it's very specific of what kind of building you're in. If you're in the Knights Temple or whatever, for that brief moment that you're walking around, yeah, you could definitely tell a difference when you're walking on that tile or if you're walking on marble or walking on wood or dirt. So that's pretty fantastic. So if you have a good pair of headphones, the Order is definitely a treat for the ears as well. And the voice acting all around is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really know much of the main cast of what they've done in the past, but they're great. So I won't be surprised if they maybe get hired on for maybe TV or any kind of other movies.
Yeah.
Well, given their beards and stuff, maybe next Pirates of the Caribbean movie or something. Or whoever the actress of Izzy is, or whatever her name is. Maybe she could be in a Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
I don't know. But going back to the pacing, though, like you said, the pacing you found was really good in the game. I found the pacing good, too.
Yeah,
it really kept you going forward.
I've seen worse.
But kind of going back to that, too, you're saying a lot of people are complaining about the pacing, calling it, terrible or bad or
pretty
whatever.
Exaggerated, in my opinion.
No, I mean, no. Yeah, it's exaggerated. Like we said, it felt like a pretty good pacing. Yeah. Another thing I found was pretty good in the game that some people were complaining about. I know a lot of people are stressing oh, you don't fight werewolves in the game. You only fight a werewolf twice. And I'm like, well, that's not really true.
No, not really.
You do you're not constantly fighting werewolves in the game, but I think they are put in about the right amount. I think the werewolf fights are the right amount.
But
I know IGN said IGN was oh, you only get in 2 or 3 fights. You get more in maybe 4 or 5, it seemed to me. And when you do get in those fights, it's not just one. You're fighting more than one. Yeah. And
then granted, when I looked at the trophies first, oh, you only have to kill 10 of these, huh? So I thought, maybe, they're far in between, and they're going to be really tough. But I don't know. They just kind of resort to the same cheap AI trick, just the way that they're designed, unfortunately, and they don't feel scary. I mean, well, they look scary, and their character design are awesome, by the way, and the way they transform, which is really cool. But other than that, just the way from the gameplay side, it's just I don't know, just it just kind of seemed like a messed up, unfortunately.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, I think they're used to the right amount.
Oh yeah,
like you're not constantly being
given the way that it's designed,
but, like,
yes. But yeah, I want to see an overhaul on that. The way you fight them.
Yeah, I mean the core fight is kind of simple. Like if he charges at you, roll away and shoot.
It's so cheap. It's just the way the game design like that. It's cheap game design.
But yeah, but I mean, usually in the environment you're in is usually like a dark room, so you kind of like they're kind of like hiding and crawling above you and stuff, and that's kind of
it's neat. Like a worse version of like those oh my god, those creatures like in Dead Space 2 and 3, where like those things are like charging at you, and then they run away when they charge at you. It's kind of like Dead Space.
You get the thing.
Yeah, those things were like legitimately scary in the second Dead Space game, but then in the third one, they just I don't know, they just come at you in droves. It's just like, well, come on, co-op partner, kill them. But yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, and then they got the one-on-one fights, and those are pretty cool. Like when you get into like
with the elder. Granted, I'll probably also have to give criticisms to that because they just copy and paste the one from the mid section of the game to the end, unfortunately. So, but other than that, I mean, it's neat. I like fighting the elders. I just wish it didn't resort to the same kind of fight in the end.
It's kind of. I do like though when you like chase that first werewolf at the very beginning of the game. It reminds me of I don't know. It reminds me of Guardians of the Galaxy because like when that one's running in the street and you pull out that gun and you like pull it out and you're like I got him and you shoot it before it hits Izzy. So it reminds me of Guardians of the Galaxy when Rocket pulls out that gun. That one scene and shoots Star-Lord at the beginning. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. So before it hits anything.
Yeah, like when you chase that werewolf through the street and it's like shoot him and then you pull out that gun and you like load it up and you charge it and then you shoot the werewolf. It reminds me of like in like in Guardians of the Galaxy when Rocket pulls out that gun and charges and shoots at Star-Lord.
Yeah, I like that.
And another thing too, like there's other little bits that remind me of Guardians of the Galaxy. Like even the clothes they wear is like the kind of like the blue suits, like the original blue suits of the Guardians of the Galaxy comics.
But yeah, it kind of looks like Star-Lord's coat.
Yeah, and then like the blue, like even that one part where you're wearing that white shirt and you're just wearing those blue pants. It reminds me of Guardians of the Galaxy because like oh look those blue Guardians of the Galaxy pants.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this game certainly takes some inspiration from a lot of things, particularly history, but not really Marvel Comics. Maybe unintentional or just coincidental, but is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's another thing that I found kind of weird with the game was that like when they were first showing off the game and everything, it's like it's London 1886 and things are different. Yeah. Like they have this like weird sense of technology where it's like we have these advanced weapons and we have this like the like a trolley system and we have this kind of more advanced sense of technology. Despite the fact that it's only 1886. And, Resistance did that first when they were like, this is World War II, but we have more advanced technology because aliens invaded us, and we kind of base this new technology off of the alien tech that we found. Mm-hmm. The thing about the Order 1886 is that it never explains why
it doesn't.
It's different. Like why are we more advanced at this point? Like, is it aliens? Is it, did we find something or did we just get smarter quicker?
Probably,
I don't know.
It really showed in, like, the, especially with, I think what kind of helped with that question that you have there is Nikola Tesla. Probably just the stuff he made was a lot more advanced than what he would have normally made in our time, in our real world. So it kind of presented maybe that what if scenario of like, what if maybe we advanced a bit quicker and better, in fact. So I don't know. Yeah, it didn't really present itself.
But I mean, like I said, they didn't really go too in depth in the world. Like they show it to you, like here's the world we're in, but they don't necessarily explain it. Like, why is technology more advanced, or how necessarily things work in this world. Like it's just kind of here it is.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I guess maybe it just leaves maybe things ambiguous in that way, but it still doesn't really work in its favor, unfortunately. And Resistance had the luxury also of like having, especially since Resistance was a franchise later on, especially after the first one, but especially it was Resistance 1 story,
Yeah,
it had narration,
but
it was really story driven too. So,
but But to be fair, I'm still not sure what the hell the story of Resistance is, like, because they kept changing it from game to game.
I mean, well, like the only thing was confusing to me about Resistance from the story's perspective was just like the origin of like the aliens, like where they came from.
Yeah, like they kept changing it. Like in the first game, they were like, in the first game they said, "Oh, it's aliens," and I'm like, "Okay, aliens invaded right before World War II. Fine." The second game, oh no, we dug up this fossil of some aliens that lived on Earth before humans, and we were experimenting on it, and we got exposed to some virus thing, and that's how we turned into aliens. So none of us are real chimera. We are merely replicants or copies of a true chimera. And I'm like, okay. Resistance 3 came around. Resistance 3 had that opening animation where it was like a meteor hit the ground and like a virus got into some guy's soup, and then he became an alien off of that. And I'm like, so what is it? Is it a meteor? Is it a virus? Is it straight up an invasion? Is it fossils in the ground? What is it?
Yeah, I think maybe
they changed it every game.
Maybe the reason why they kind of maybe changed it every game was like, maybe they had a tough time. No, like actually, not the writers necessarily, but I'm talking like the people in the world. Maybe had a tough time where it came from, because especially in the first Resistance game, when you look back, they were kind of vague about it. Like, oh, it was like a virus or like an infection. So like, well, where did that like come from? That's what I was like. Where did that come from? Like aliens? Did that come from something that was just recently discovered, or what? So that was kind of left to the interpretation. So, maybe that's kind of maybe why it changed over time. Now, the one in Resistance 3 was a bit appalling. Maybe that's actually where it begun, and then that's when the virus was, and then it was alien. But I don't know. That's like a question left to Insomniac, and then whenever Resistance 4 comes out one day, maybe that'll explain it.
Resistance 4, the definitive origin. They're going to change it again, but they'll say, "We mean it this time. We meant it. This is the real one this time."
Oh yeah, that's the real one. They won't change it again.
It's just. I just found that all weird. But like I was saying, like with the order, they never have any kind of explanation. But like you said, it is the first game, so maybe with a potential sequel, we can go more kind of into like this world and kind of why it is the way it is. Because, I mean, for the most part, they really kind of just drop you into it. Like you're a guy in the order, and you're this guy who's like in the order, and you're here to protect people, like the kingdom or whatever it is of whatever London's thing is at this time. And I mean, and they didn't go for the cliche like, oh, here's the new guy, teach him what to do.
Oh, thank goodness! Yeah, like he was already set. He already knows how to use the weapons. Like, it isn't a guy that's like, I'm not a soldier. Far Cry.
Yeah.
I'm not a soldier.
Yeah, because most games and movies that deal with kind of like an order or like a society or something like that, a group, there's always that new guy, and he's kind of like the segue for the audience to kind of like ask questions and wonder what the hell's going on.
That's a good point. That's actually a really good point, actually. That's something maybe enough people don't give the order credit for, actually. That's actually good. I've never heard of that. That's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, they avoided that, so it was kind of like more just here you go.
Yeah, lame comparisons here, but even like the Ghostbusters game on PS3, it presented the story in such a way where like you were the new Ghostbuster, and it had to tell you things about, the whole world of Ghostbusters and how things worked and like how you did things, but that was like with a group. But now with this group, it's a lot more badass, where like you already know how to use the weapons, you already know how things work. That's pretty cool. And it's kind of funny though that this game came out in February. Yeah. It was kind of around the time Kingsman came out, which is actually kind of almost a modern day version of the Order. Because they're both basically the protectors of London and the Queen's Kingsman or whatever, and like they do the same thing. Like in both the movie Kingsman and the Order, they're all like the main people are named after the Knights of the Round Table. Like they both do that. Yeah,
they both do the code name thing.
Right.
And so it's just kind of funny that these two things came out around the same time.
Yeah, it was pretty lucky.
Like
well, I mean, the order was delayed.
So, yeah, but they still came around the same time, like about a week apart, and they kind of have a similar kind of story, or not story, but like idea of what they are. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
They both serve the same purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting way to look at it.
There's that.
Mm-hmm. Now that we're about the halfway point of talking about the order, I have some questions submitted to us about the order 1886 and its possible future, and maybe some things that can be improved as well.
Viewer mail.
Mm-hmm. Our first question here comes from Emmett.
Emmett.
Yeah, kind of a familiar name nowadays.
Cool. He's awesome.
Yeah, he is he is an awesome guy. He's a good friend of mine. He's on Twitter. Don't remember his Twitter handle, unfortunately, but he's a good man. He just recently purchased a PS4, and he played The Order. So I think that was actually one of his first games he's played.
Cool.
Not the best first impression, but a good one at that. What do you think of games that leave on a cliffhanger or just simply build up toward a sequel? We kind of talked about that for a while. We probably should have brought up that question. But what do you think of games that kind of maybe just do that? I mean, another game on PS4 that definitely does that is Wolfenstein: A New Order. Wolfenstein: New Order's ending kind of leaves it in a way where it kind of just ends, and it also does leave you wondering what is going to happen next in Wolfenstein: A New Order. Highly recommend that game, by the way. But what do you think about that? Games that maybe are kind of just built that way? Because, a lot of games nowadays have trouble ending properly. And I'm not sure, maybe if that's the approach nowadays, just to end things like that.
Yeah, I mean, most games, they kind of just... I mean, games, for the most part, I think kind of... they don't do it too bad most of the time, where like most games do kind of end in a way where it's like there could be a sequel, but if there isn't, it is kind of self-contained in a way.
Yeah, kind of maybe leave it open in some way to come back to ever again.
For the most part, because I mean, like we said, like something like Last of Us, where it ended with like kind of almost no real intention of a sequel. I mean, they left it open where we could make a sequel. Mm-hmm. But they had no intention of making a sequel, and now there's all this talks of like, oh, we might make a sequel,
Right.
And, and there's other games where it's like, and there's other situations where it kind of depends on how much you play of it. Like you play something like Dead Space 3, and when you get to the end of it, it's like, oh, this franchise is done. But then, if you buy the DLC, it's like, oh no, this franchise isn't done.
We have a question about DLC soon, but continue on.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, like something like with Dead Space 3, it's like that was one where like the original ending is done, but then they did the DLC and it's like, oh, well now it's not done.
Nope, it's not. And then we just had recently, newsflash here, that we have some news that Visual may want to continue working on this franchise soon.
Yeah.
In some way.
So maybe that can happen.
It's definitely a possibility later down the road.
Yeah. And I mean, and then there's other ones where it's like, I mean, I guess, as I said, but there's other games too that have done it. Like, Sly Cooper 4 did that. There's a cliffhanger ending, and like, there's no plans for Sly Cooper 5, like, at all.
That's what I worried about. Like, I hope the order isn't this case where it's like, oh, I was so cocky that I wanted to do this like kind of ending, and then they're like, oh, there's no sequel.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that we maybe want to talk about here before we get to the next question. What were you going to say?
Yeah, and Sly Cooper actually does have a pretty big cliffhanger, like, and it's just weird that there's just no plans to continue off of it.
But here's my question about that. I mean, did Sly Cooper sold relatively well?
Yeah, it did. It did actually, because they launched at a $40 price tag. Mm-hmm. It sold well. It was free on Plus recently, so that gave a chance for a lot more people to play it.
Anybody that's redeemed it for Plus and maybe has just had it there, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think it's just the developer.
Right. Sanzaru.
How you say it? Sanzaru. Yeah, because right now they are not working on like anything PlayStation related, like they did that terrible Sonic game.
Yeah, Sonic Boom.
Recently. Yeah, and they're working on some other stuff right now, like multi-platform stuff, and they're just not, they're just not.
The game's not in active development
right now. Yeah, so it's just one of those things where like, I don't know if Sucker Punch would go back and do it, but that would feel really weird. That they kind of passed on this franchise to a new developer, and they kind of just pass it back, like, here, now you do it, and it's like, what?
Or even maybe just possibly another one that's not even Sucker Punch, at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could always go to another developer, but it's just feel weird. Just this franchise just
passed around,
bouncing between developers. Yeah.
I mean, at that point, you would have to, and PS4 is still relatively young. And then remember when Sly Cooper 4 came to PS3, it was pretty late in its life cycle at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we might see the same deal here with PS4, honestly, because, I mean, I'm not sure whether, that's not up to me to figure out whether or not this console generation is going to last longer than the last, but maybe just, we're going to see some franchises out there that maybe have a long indeed and are in need of a return, and maybe just we have to wait for them a bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just
because
weird.
I don't see the order being that. Like, I don't see this coming out and then just having a sequel like 4 years later. I see it 2 years later.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get a sequel
because the engine's there. It works fine. It basically works perfect. It just fix everything else.
Like the engine's there.
It works.
They obviously plan for a sequel because, like you said, there's like story threads that are not finished up in 1886, and it's leading itself to a new direction. And it's like, well, they're planning a sequel. It's not like that. It's not like I said. It's not like they left the door open for there might be a sequel. Like Last of Us, everything was done. Like they did everything. They finished their story threads. They did all this and that with the characters. And they ended it, and it's like, okay, but we can do a sequel if we want to, but we don't have to.
Right.
It's kind of like Beyond Two Souls kind of ended in a way where it looks like there could be a sequel, but they don't have to be a sequel.
We'll have to see about Beyond Two Souls. I mean, I haven't played it, but I'm not sure. I mean, that game is coming to PS4 one day, so we got to see one day. I still have confidence that game will come out on PS4 one day. Actually, our next question here comes from Anthony. He asks about what could be added in a sequel in order to give extra replay incentive. To hold on to the game longer, as really he's saying, so you don't have to, the instant you beat it, you just trade it in. Is there anything maybe that could be added to the story, like a new game plus or multiple branching paths? What?
Okay. Well, what obviously they can do is, you can make the game a little longer. You can make the story go on a little longer.
Right.
You can have to play some more. Also, I mean, one thing too is just make the trophies a little more diverse. Kind of give it that replay value of just kind of doing more with the trophies. Because
the trophy here is our trophy list here is lazy.
Because a lot of people complain, some people complain about trophies, and I'm like, well, no, they do help the replay value of a game,
Mm-hmm.
And you look at something longevity. Like The Order, like you can get the platinum in one playthrough,
mm-hmm.
and and it's really easy. Like a lot of these, you're not really kind of telling yourself to go for it. You're just kind of doing it.
Yeah, it's a little. It degrades the currency a little bit, honestly. Like when it's just handing you golds and silvers like nothing.
Yeah. There's not even any bronze trophies in the game. It's just like, here you go. Here's some silver and gold, and
it doesn't make any sense when I can get get the platinum in the Order 1886 in 6 to 8 hours, but it takes me like 125 hours to get the platinum in GTA 5. It doesn't help at all.
Yeah, because look at something like
Dragon Age or something like that. It takes way longer.
What is it? Like look at. Yeah, or look at something like The Last of Us. Like, that's a game that takes a really long time to get the platinum. But like, even if you took the multiplayer out, it would still take you a while to get that platinum in the single player, because you have to beat it on like 5 different difficulties and find all the items and get all the upgrades and this and that. And it's just there's a lot to do within that single player. So that's something they could do with The Order. Like they could add like stuff like weapon upgrades, like find parts and customize your weapons, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of give you that little extra replay value or that extra, kind of play how you want, like how you can modify your weapons the way you want them to work.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That'd be great. Like maybe a little bit more depth for the weapons. Maybe like every once in a while, similar to Last of Us again. Yes, Last of Us. It's really that pinnacle game, honestly. After that game came out, that you have maybe an upgrade table every once in a while, and you have parts or something. Stuff that you collect. Maybe some depth. Like so it maybe isn't as simple.
But I don't want the Order to feel like a knockoff of The Last of Us. I'm not saying that. It's just The Last of Us is a game that I had a multiplayer, but if you took that away, that'd be such a great single player because it has so much for you to do and kind of how good it is. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of those things where the Order needs to look to that and kind of say, well, we don't need to necessarily copy that game, but that's kind of our benchmark of that's how you do a single player game.
Well, this game was actually partly inspired by Uncharted 2, actually, at the start of the development of it. It was inspired partly by Uncharted 2, mainly. I think the founder of the company was really aspiring to, how cinematic that game was. Uncharted 2 specifically. When that game hit, especially from, the first one to the second one, that was a huge deal. Especially for that game. Because that game won multiple Game of the Year awards. That was, really when the PS3 was still a little bit in trouble, in my opinion, by that time in 2009. It really took a name of its own, PlayStation 3. So, in terms of exclusives. Yeah. So, we saw that in the Order 1886, really, in terms of its presentation. There's really no other bar that can go any higher on terms of that. But, I just want the gameplay maybe be a little bit better.
Yeah, I really see that with the sequel, them adding weapon upgrades and something, kind of give you some more variety to the single player. And I don't want them to tack on a multiplayer mode, but they could put in a co-op horde mode, just kind of give you something with your friends.
Yeah, maybe give you at least something, but I don't know. Maybe it's that one franchise that doesn't include multiplayer at all, because I don't think Sony's really going to force in multiplayer on their games because. Goodness gracious, there's so much competition out there in terms of multiplayer offerings. Granted, yes, it helps with the longevity of the game and stops you from trading it in, but there's just so much. And by the time a sequel to The Order would come out, there is going to be a crap ton now. So it wouldn't help if you had one more in there. But it would be really unique, though, a hypothetical multiplayer mode of The Order, with its graphics, its weapons, and all that stuff. It would be really unique, though. It's a neat idea.
And you could fight werewolves. How many games can you say, hey, I fight werewolves in it?
Yeah, not very many. Just take off the black bars, maybe, when you're playing a multiplayer, at least. I don't know why you would need that. It's not like we're in a movie together. Maybe that would be kind of cool if that's what it's aiming for, but I don't know. What else do we have here in terms of questions?
Yeah.
This one comes from Doug. He asks, "Would you see the game getting a significant price cut or coming to PlayStation Plus as a free game, basically?"
Okay. Okay, what?
He says, when we expect the game basically kind of to be at a lower price point or be free.
I don't know. Normally I would say it might be a while because Sony usually waits a while to cut prices on their exclusives. I say usually, but actually this past generation we've seen the exclusives drop pretty quickly. You're
talking about with this this generation, PS4?
The PS4 generation, because we saw that with Infamous Second Son. I think within a month we saw drops $40. Yes. That's a lot of places. Did little quick sales.
Mm-hmm. Little Big Planet 3
and
dropped
you can get
really
that game
quick.
brand new. Mm-hmm. And you can get the games like Infamous Second Son. That game's been out a year now. You can already get it for $20 at a lot of places. Killzone you can get for $20 a lot of places. Knack you can get at $20 a lot of places.
Or even 10 a lot of these on the PlayStation Store in some week sale.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just one of those things where within a year we've already seen exclusives drop to $20, which usually doesn't happen a lot in the PS3 generation. Usually they stay at the full $60 for a while. Mm-hmm. So like something with the order, like maybe within a month or so you'll start seeing it drop to probably like $40 at some places.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you can get it for that price if you want. If you can wait another month or two. If you're really in it, if you really want to wait, in a year, probably down to $20 eventually.
Yeah, that's probably the way it goes, really. So, but we already saw the GameStop trading value really go down significantly, already pretty fast. So you're gonna see like a lot of used copies of it. But that's just the way it goes all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now, the trading value right now is like $30. That's half, and that's usually what they offer. Yeah.
But like, I bet like they're gonna be getting like flooded with like copies of the order. Like, oh, what do we do? Sell them, obviously, yeah. But you basically hit the nail on the head on it right there. But I would also like to mention with the PlayStation Plus thing, I think you'll see this game relatively soon on probably PS Plus. That kind of agrees what you just said about price cutting and like where you should get the game 6 months down the road, but I don't know, because despite the PlayStation Plus line being really good right now, I would like it if they just, had one like big game out there that like, yes, we have a big game out there on PlayStation Plus now.
Yeah, but Sony hasn't put out any of their exclusives free.
Not yet. Not
yet. And it'd be weird for the order to be the first one. Like I keep saying, like the first one they're probably going to put out as a launch title, like Killzone or Knack.
Yeah, we see Killzone or Knack, or even better yet, Infamous Second Son. Like at this point, I don't know. Like Infamous Second Son would be kind of a waste because like a lot of people had already owned that game or had played it at that point. Because especially like First Light was free recently, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or at least if they put out Killzone, at least it would boost the multiplayer.
They
put that out
because look at Injustice when that was free, right? Because that was like the first big game that to be free for PlayStation Plus on PS4, and a lot of people played that game when that came out. Because, like you said, it sold poorly on PS4. So.
Yeah, like I said, I just don't see the order coming free within a year.
Within a year,
because there's just so many other games that would come first.
Okay. I expect.
But like I said, within a year it'll drop to $20, and within the next month or so you'll probably see it down to $40. So there you go.
All right, cool. All right, so we have more questions about like online stuff for the order. This one comes from Gabe. Mm-hmm. He says, "Is there any sign that there could be DLC later down the road? Given how short the story really is, would love to know your thoughts." This one you already kind of had on the bag. I'll let you go with that one.
Yeah, because the thing I was thinking about with DLC for the order is that I was playing the game a while ago, and one of the weird things is when you're at the main menu, it has the start game, new game, chapters, and all that, but it says extras. I'm like, okay, let me click extras. And the only thing listed in extras is credits. So it's kind of got me thinking, well, if there was DLC, they would probably put it right here under extras, right? So, I don't know. It's kind of got me thinking there might be some DLC they could put right there.
I like the optimism there. I just don't see it. I would have thought that they would have maybe had said something at this point, given the negative press before the game's release and all that stuff. That maybe they would have fired back and say, "Hey, maybe you keep your game copy after this, because guess what? Later down the road, maybe 3-6 months from now, you're gonna see a piece of DLC for this game." But there's been no word about that, and I don't think we're ever gonna get word about it ever.
Yeah, but Sony's really been putting out significant DLC for their games lately. Well, like we saw with The Last of Us, it got a single player expansion.
Well, but Last of Us already had a season pass. Last of Us had a season pass.
Yeah, it already had a season pass, but you look at something else like Infamous. Infamous didn't have a season pass, but they still put out a single player expansion. I mean, it was standalone, but it was still essentially a single player expansion to the game.
Yeah, I see. Yes, I see a standalone expansion or prequel or whatever of the like to the order, but an add-on content for the game to be seasonal. Luckily, I'm looking at the back of the box right now. And what I miss on the back of the boxes of PS4 games is that they don't give you like what features you got. Yes, they do, like on the bottom here with the number of players, DualShock, and remote play and all that stuff. But remember, like on the back of PS3 boxes, they would tell you like what network features it has. Like it would have answered our question right there if the game said like add-on content. But either way, if it said add-on content, there is add-on content that you can get for the game, supposedly, right? In the armory, where you can get different suits and skins. So, yeah, it's a little tricky there for that. But, I don't know. My take on that, I don't see a DLC, but you have a sense of optimism that there might be possible DLC later down the road.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Well, even if it's a standalone thing, I would still count that as DLC. Like it's still an expansion of the game.
Okay, yeah, that I would rightfully agree with.
Like, because I don't want them to announce a standalone thing, and then you're like, I see, it wasn't DLC, and I'm like, well, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but I'm talking about add-on. Like you have to hold on to your copy for the game you have to hold it on for dear life in order to play this.
I mean, I'm talking whether or not it's a DLC or a standalone. I still feel optimistic that there's going to be some type of expansion,
right?
Before a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's plenty that they can do. They can do a straight up prequel to the main game, with the character, or they can do like a side story, because there's a lot of times when characters go off on their own.
Yes.
During the game, where you can play that side of the story, and if you did that, so there's definitely potential to kind of expand upon this game, before a sequel.
Yeah.
And if they really want to be creative, they can use that DLC as kind of an experiment to kind of test, new features,
new gameplay elements.
Throw in a few new things there. I mean, we even saw that with First Light. First Light had different stuff to it than the main game of Second Son.
Oh,
kind of the way it handled,
Infamous game.
Yeah, the way it handles skill points. SP Sucker Punch. that whole thing was in First Light.
Yeah.
And kind of the way it did that, add the arena mode and all that. So, they could use a DLC to kind of test new ideas before fully committing to a sequel.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So,
we have one more question, and it is sequel related again. Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
This one comes from Kate. She asks, "What ways do you see the story going forward in the Order 1886? New characters, setting?" That's it. That's how it was written. That's how it was written. Setting? I don't know. I don't really understand this question. I just see the game just taking place right after the end of the first game. I mean, the engine was already built in such a way that it was so specific to that setting that I don't see the game being set in America or Asia or some other country. And that would be really neat. Don't get me wrong, but the engine was already built in such a way that they crafted it.
Yeah.
That way that it would be all that would be wasted basically if it was set in New York or something of that time.
But I mean, the only other place I could see it taking place is India, because they mentioned India a lot in the game.
Right.
But I mean, who knows? Maybe they want to go like full scale with this one, where it's like, you know, Uncharted 1 took place all on one island, and then like Uncharted 2 and 3 were like globetrotting. So like maybe like they ordered the second one's like a globetrotting adventure.
Right.
You know? So I mean,
I don't know. It's just if it doesn't, if the Order 1887 or whatever sequel is doesn't follow that bookmark approach again, where it just, you know, continuously like goes, because like Uncharted kind of takes place within that short period of time, but Uncharted doesn't have that approach where it's like bookmarked or whatever. It just feels really weird the way the Order approaches things. So if maybe it says like, yeah, approach the Uncharted way. Again, more Naughty Dog games here to really go off of, but still, you know, maybe kind of approach it that different way. But I don't know. I just feel like the engine would be wasted if you just put it on another location, because that would require like so much work to like really recreate everything again in that engine, because they already put so much work into like that world already, and I would like to see that world again, martial law, all that cool stuff that was like in the end of the game, right? Because it was like martial law in the end. So I'd like to see how much different it is from this game. But yeah. So hopefully that kind of answers the question there for the Order 1887 or whatever have you. Is there anything else in any closing thoughts on the Order? We both like the game.
Okay.
We don't hate it at all. We actually quite enjoy it.
Well, okay. How about this? I'll give you. Okay, give me like I'll give you a 30-second summary of how I feel about the game.
Oh, 30-second summary. So the half-minute review.
I'll give you a 30-second summary how I feel, and you give me a 30-second summary.
Oh my gosh! Well, now I'm on the spot. Now I gotta start thinking. Okay, fine.
No, I'm going to go. I'm going to go
All right,
first.
that's good. That's good. Fine,
you
go first then. All right, fine. I'll think.
Okay.
I'm just thinking.
Okay. I really like the Order 1886. I think it got a lot of crap for no reason. I just think that it was a first effort from a small studio, so it's kind of a learning process, kind of to get this going. And like I said, graphically it's amazing. It has a great kind of world it's building. I just wish they would have actually kind of explained and gone into more detail about kind of what this world is and how it is. And I wish they kind of would have focused more on the story at hand and not on the sequel, because by doing that you kind of felt like rushing through to get to the end, where it's like, all right, we gotta get to the end so we can hit the cliffhanger and get the sequel going. And like that to me is kind of what hurt the game story, at least, was that it's so focused on a sequel and they weren't spending time kind of explaining the world. But I do like the characters they introduce, and I like the world. I just want to see more about it, and I want to see kind of more enhancements to the gameplay, because I mean, for what it is, I like it. I mean, yeah, it's just cover-based shooting, but at least you use some cool weapons. Like the electric gun, and then the flame, not the flamethrower, but like the little flame dust thing is awesome to use. And there's some great brutal animations, like when you go for the melee kills, and the stealth kills are actually done really well. You can use timing. And I mean, the animations are great. Like when you shoot a guy in the leg rips off and you see blood and bone fly.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there's some good stuff there. So I think it's a great foundation.
You see what there is, like what the weapons could actually do to people.
Yeah. So basically, I think the Order is great. It's a great foundation. But that's kind of what it is. It's a foundation for what they want to go with the series, rather than making a great, full game to do now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So I mean, I would give this game like a 7. It's a good game, but it's a good foundation.
I don't know. I think I might have to be a little different. It's my turn.
It's a 7. It's a 7. It's a good foundation of what's going to be a great game. So how about that?
Mine's a little tricky on this one. All right, now it's my turn.
Yeah. Just kind of give a quick thoughts. I know it went over 30 seconds.
That was like that's the minute review.
Yeah, that was a minute. I don't know. Just do whatever.
Like I said, I think, especially some things I've seen online and all that stuff, I think some things of the game were a bit exaggerated. But I do think there were some criticisms in the right parts, like the story, especially the ending. And I would just like things to be just expanded a bit more. Like, I want better collectibles. I want meaningful collectibles. I want maybe some things within the third-person cover shooting that kind of more sets it apart from other games in the genre. Gears of War, Uncharted, Last of Us, they do it better. And I want something in the Order that kind of screams out that it's different. And to me, it really doesn't. Other than the weapons, granted, they're really cool. But it's not enough sometimes, and to me, that's not enough. I just feel like overall, it just didn't give me the sense that it felt like it earned its place to even not exist, because it rightfully does exist in its maybe contained, possibly expanded universe, but just the way it was set up, to me, it just didn't really feel like it earned its place to even warrant a sequel yet. But the fact that it was built that way, it just kind of has to. But so we'll just have to see how things improve from here. To me, it just has really nowhere to go but up. I don't really know if I want to assign a score to it, honestly. Like, honestly, if I would even at that, I would probably kind of maybe go like halfway with it. Not really a 5, but it's good, but it's not necessarily great, but it's not bad either. It's just kind of in the middle. That's how I kind of feel. So it gets a lot of things right, but just some things that it gets wrong. It just adds up. The trophies, the collectibles, the story, and all that just kind of floods into me. And it's not very pleasant.
Well, how about Well, how about out of 5? Because like a 7 out of 10 is like a 3.5 out of 5. So you give it like a 3 out of 5.
I'll say 2.5. 2.5
out of 5.
I would say 2.5.
2.5 out of 5. 2.5 out of 5.
It's like basically half to me. you have basically you have the presentation 11 out of 10, and you kind of have the gameplay kind of like almost a 5 out of 10. So that's basically to me kind of like half a game. That's how I kind of felt like about Assassin's Creed 3.
Yeah, but if you average that out, that's 11 and a 5. That's a 16. Half of 16 is an 8.
11 and a 5.
Half of 16 is an 8.
Fine. The presentation's 10 out of 10, but it's fine. I love the presentation.
There you go. That's still 7.5.
I'm not going to really play with the scores for this particular game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But but still, Admiral first attempt from Ready at Dawn. It's so exciting to see what they're going to work on next. And woo doggy, this was quite an episode here. Thank you all for listening. This is our first time doing kind of a spin-off episode here, the PSBS. This episode isn't numbered. Yeah, we're going to give it its own special title about the order. If any of you guys have any opinions that differ from ours, which I'm sure you do, you can definitely hit us up in the YouTube comment section. We have our Facebook page. We have our PSN IDs, and where I got my questions in, which I really greatly appreciate you all for sending, because that really helped out. Mm-hmm. That is about the end of the day for the Order 1886, and our time here on the PlayStation Bull Session. I am your host, Andrew Arenas, with my co-host here,
Cote, PSN, bayouboyz.
We all wish you a very good rest of the day, and we will see you again on Wednesday.
1 hour forward, because you got to put your clocks forward tonight.
Yes, that is important. Do that on your PS4 and PS3. I haven't done it on my PS3 ever because I barely use it, but now it's going to be on regular time now.
It's going to be a regular time.
Yes, I did not change it on my PS3. I just left it as it is. I didn't even bother to do it the last daylight savings. So do that, people. It'll really throw you off. Trust me.
Do that. Yeah.
It'll really throw you off. But thank you everyone for listening. Thank you all for your time. Yep. Have a good week. And
I guess.
Click.